Nature connects us all here in the Northwest.
It's
just a spiritual part of it, you know. Look at that. That's so cool.
And living here carries a certain responsibility.
We as humans, I feel, have been put here to manage the land.
It's not always easy.
This is where they're killing the most. We have our cattle currently just down in that field.
But the hope is we can find a balance.
We're taking away from their habitat, and the best thing you can do is give it back to them.
In this Environment Northwest special, we're tracking our human impact on nature in the Northwest.
Typically, animals will cross along the road and often will get hit by vehicles.
You know, they made the decision back then that they had to make, but it was an everlasting, you know, impact on the environment and the people.
And the choices that are shaping our future.
It trickles down to pretty much every person within the Northwest.
This is Environment Northwest, connected with nature. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Environment Northwest special. I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoo, and over the next hour, we'll look at our connection to nature here in the Northwest and how it impacts us and how we impact it. We begin with an investigation into growing numbers of wild predators in Washington. KREM 2's Whitney Ward digs into the effect wolves, cougars, and bears are having on the people who live here.
I did not bring any apples. We didn't.
Kathy McKay is the lifelong owner of K Diamond K Guest Ranch in Republic. Built by her parents, she has spent her life continuing the family legacy and passing it on to others.
We feed 2 tons of hay a day.
But as she showed me around her 1,700-acre property, she says the growing wolf population right in her own backyard makes her wonder about the future.
We're the ones going extinct.
Kathy tells me she has known wolf packs on all sides.
This is where they're killing the most. We have our cattle currently just down in that field.
How many packs are up here? Do you know?
I know of about 5 packs that are within 25 miles of us.
That hasn't always been the case. She says it's only been in the last 5 to 7 years that the wolves have truly emerged as her #1 threat.
Kathy tells me she's lost more than 100 animals here at the ranch over the last decade. At first, it was maybe 1 or 2 each year, but this year alone, it's already been 20. She says the problem clearly is not getting better, it's getting worse.
But wolves are not the only predator out there. This map from Washington's Department of Fish and Wildlife shows reported sightings of the state's wolves, cougars, and even grizzly bears. Cougar sightings are the most frequent statewide. It's estimated there are about 2,500 adult cougars in the state, and there are thousands of reports every year and occasionally attacks on people, like this one near Snoqualmie Pass earlier this year, or this one in Stevens County in 2022 that seriously injured a little girl.
How scary it must have been for them.
WDFW data shows 247 depredation incidents involving cougars, killing or injuring mostly smaller animals like goats and sheep. 1 in 3 attacks happening in these 4 counties. Grizzlies are reported far less often, but they are in Washington. This same map shows a handful of sightings just this year. And while they are a protected species in Washington, they are managed at the federal level by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and their numbers in Washington are minimal, only a few dozen that roam between the U.S.-Canada border in the Selkirk Mountains and a handful in the North Cascades. But the plan to bring grizzlies back also worries a lot of people here in eastern Washington, saying they will only add to the wolf problem. This grizzly was spotted on camera numerous times in Stevens County, killing one family's chickens.
Grizzly bears, they just don't stop. Once they find something that they want, you don't just chase them off.
But wolves are what's spotted most regularly in Ferry, Stevens, and Pend Oreille counties, and I have covered their continued conflict with ranchers here for almost 10 years. More than half of the state's 42 documented packs are in this small remote corner of the state, at least 260 total wolves and 36 known attacks on cattle. But law enforcement here says those official numbers are just a fraction of reality.
Some of the ranchers here aren't reporting anymore because contacting us contacting the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They have given up on us coming up with solutions.
Ray Maycumber has been the sheriff of Ferry County for the last decade. He is now one of 16 Eastern Washington sheriffs who have formed a coalition providing testimony to the Fish and Wildlife Commission about serious concerns for public safety.
You've got bus stops out in the rural areas that overlap with known wolf territory. They're being seen all over the place, even in backyards.
He says ranchers and property owners like Kathy have lost faith in the state's ability or willingness to manage Washington's wolves in a way that works for everyone.
We keep following a plan that isn't working.
What would your message be to incoming state leaders?
Be sure to listen to everyone.
I took those concerns to the Department of Fish and Wildlife to ask what would it take to change how Washington manages its wolves.
What does it tell you as a department that so many people don't want to report, that so many people don't feel that it makes a difference?
It is a little discouraging because we also rely on that data to know what's going on out there. Our numbers differ a lot then from what we're hearing.
What about the idea of relocating some of them out of that northeast corner into kind of the southwest where they're not yet, fully established, just to balance things out and kind of ease the burden?
The research on translocation shows that generally animals don't survive or they just return where they came from. So what we could do, revisit the gray wolf conservation and management plan. We could open that up and rediscuss it. But again, that's something that would have to come at the direction of either the Fish and Wildlife Commission or a request from the Wolf Advisory Group.
She says so far that hasn't happened, so until then, both sides will have to make some sacrifice. Back here at K Diamond K, Kathy says the sacrifice has been one-sided.
There's people 300 miles away making decisions for our livelihood. I feel like we're preaching on deaf ears.
She worries even if there is a change, it may be too little and too late.
We as humans, I feel, have been put here to manage the land. Our whole life, we helped animals, and they can't speak, they can't talk, so they are all relying on me to protect them.
This past year brought news that another predator, grizzly bears, are coming back to the North Cascades. That region is an area where they used to live before humans killed them off, so it's been targeted as a place to continue the federal rehabilitation. The plan calls for bringing 3 to 7 grizzlies each year from the Rocky Mountains or British Columbia to the North Cascades. This will continue over the next 5 to 10 years. While scientists want to bring them back to their natural habitat, locals and farmers are worried about the potential impact.
If a kid goes out there, he's in jeopardy. If that predator comes around the farm animals are in jeopardy.
The goal is to rebuild a population of 200 bears over the next century. Still ahead on this Environment Northwest special, after decades of sitting unused, a bridge to nowhere might finally have a purpose.
Takes 1 or 2 brave cow elk and the rest will go.
Plus, the everlasting impact of mining in eastern Washington.
It's hard to fathom, to think a mineral is worth someone's life. But when you're in an industry that destroys our mother, nature, that's the cost.
For decades, it was a literal bridge to nowhere in North Idaho, an overpass on I-90 in the Silver Valley that was never open to drivers and unused for more than 50 years. I traveled to Osborne to see how the bridge will be used to welcome a new kind of traffic. The Silver Valley is home to an abundant, wide array of wildlife. It also has one of the busiest freeways in the entire region running right through it. And those two things don't always get along.
We have big game, so deer, elk, moose, bears, mountain lions. Laura Wolf, I'm a regional wildlife biologist with Idaho Department of Fish and Game. Typically, animals will cross along the road and often will get hit by vehicles.
Wildlife crossings simply get animals from one side of the road to the other without crossing through traffic.
In the 2-mile stretch on either side of this overpass, there were about 75 animals hit in the last 10 years.
The stretch of road from the east side of Coeur d'Alene to the Montana border has the second highest density of roadkill anywhere along Interstate 90 stretching from Seattle to Boston.
And Luckily, in the last 20 years, I've spent a lot of time doing animal and aquatic conveyance. I'm Kirsten Voorhees. I am a civil engineer by degree. For my career, I do animal corridors mostly. I do bridge systems.
Osborne, Idaho is Kirsten's backyard. But this old abandoned bridge, one day becoming a wildlife crossing, wasn't her idea.
A local guy, one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet, who really had a dream and a vision, and he bugged people for a good decade.
Carl Wilson was an avid outdoorsman and a member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation who worked hard to make this happen. To him, it seemed simple. Put this bridge that sat unused for more than 5 decades to good use.
So the main thing is to put up funnel fencing. So that's typically 8-foot fence that as they come towards the roadway, the fence just funnels them towards the either overpass or underpass, depending on what the structure is.
That makes this crossing much cheaper than others in the region. For reference, the crossing over I-90 on Snoqualmie Pass cost about $6.2 million.
And so it's whatever it costs to purchase and implement fencing. That's basically the cost of this structure. And that right now is probably somewhere around $400,000 to $500,000.
Money that comes from a grant through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the smallest one awarded because no major infrastructure changes are needed. Even the pavement on the bridge stays.
It just takes 1 or 2 brave cow elk and the rest will go.
A relatively easy solution to a dangerous problem, all thanks to one man's persistence.
He said, I need you to promise me that you're going to finish this thing if I don't make it.
Carl passed about a year ago, but his dream lives on. A dream that may lead to future crossings for the Silver Valley, helping to make the interstate a little safer for everyone.
So we carry it through, and we'll continue to carry it through no matter what it takes.
You can keep updated with all our Environment Northwest coverage with KREM 2 Plus. It's our streaming channel that you watch on your TV. We have recent stories in our Environment Northwest specials available for you to watch on demand. If you don't yet have KREM 2 Plus, it's free and available to download on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. It has been decades since mining ended, but environmental impacts are still being felt at the Midnight Mine.
You know, they made the decision back then that they had to make, but it was an everlasting, impact on the environment and the people.
Up next, our Environment Northwest team investigates the lasting impact of uranium mining on the Spokane tribe. Plus,
it trickles down to pretty much every person within the Northwest.
We'll take you inside the lab at Washington State University that is helping keep all of us safe from animal diseases. Welcome back to our Environment Northwest special, Connected with Nature. I'm Jeremy Legoo. It's been decades since miners last pulled uranium from the Midnight Mine in Stevens County, but the environmental impacts are still felt to this day. The mine is located along the Spokane River on the Spokane Reservation near Welpinit. Aidan Brown with our Environment Northwest team investigates the lasting impact of the mine on the Spokane tribe and the land they call home.
Since time immemorial, the Spokane tribe has called this region home. But just 70 years ago, a major discovery left the face of this landscape changed forever.
The mine was here before I was born. We grew up with it. You just didn't really pay attention. It was here. It was just part of the landscape, essentially.
In 1954, twin brothers Jim and John LeBret struck atomic age gold, uranium. The brothers then went forward and started Midnight Mine. Over the next 10 years, the mine would go on to produce 5.3 million pounds of proto-ore and leave a slew of environmental issues for the Spokane people in its wake.
It's hard to fathom, to think a mineral is worth someone's life. But when you're in an industry that destroys our mother, nature, that's the cost.
The mine consisted of 4 open pits. But by 1979, Dawn Mining Company faced issues with water runoff and accumulation of a radioactive slurry in these pits. A pond was constructed to hold this toxic water, but it wasn't enough.
The Spokane tribe, like other tribes in the United States, understand water is life. Not just a saying, but true, to understand that and to feel it spiritually as a culture in your tradition and your understanding of what all of this is about, That's the bottom line.
In a 2010 assessment, the Federal Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry classified activities using waters from the nearby Blue Creek drainage as a public health hazard.
So that's why the Spokane Tribe of Indians challenged ourselves, because we have to meet it, to have the highest water quality standards in the nation.
But Blue Creek has been a popular swimming, fishing, and recreational spot for many in the Spokane Tribe, including Ricky Sherwood.
Just on the other side of this hill over there, there's the Blue Creek campground. We grew up swimming and it was kind of our spot. Every summer, this was just kind of where we would go.
Now, all along Blue Creek, signs warn visitors of the invisible danger.
To be safe, we posted those signs.
Linda Meyer is the remedial project manager for the Midnight Mine Superfund site and has overseen this cleanup effort throughout its progress.
Once we do the cleanup and investigate the sediments and feel comfortable we've removed, that the sediments meet the cleanup standard, we should be able to take those signs down.
But cleanup efforts over the years have already made a huge impact on the area.
Pit 3, here's what it looked like early this season. Later, mid-season, we've dewatered that pit and removed the contaminated sediments from the bottom and are now placing a geomembrane and then starting to install the well that water will be collected and pumped out of this.
Warren Saylor has been speaking on this issue since 1990. But before he was working on the cleanup effort,
I was a prober. I was deep in the pit, the bottom of the pit. That stuff was so black. I'd stick the probe on those rocks and that meter would just sink out of sight.
Almost all of the original miners were members of the Spokane Tribe, and the Midnight Mine provided one of the only industry jobs on the reservation.
The thing about the mine, people kind of fail to understand when they say, why would you go there? You have to feed your family. I got kids, only job on the reservation, only job for 50 miles, 60 miles around, because nobody was going to hire an Indian in those days to work at that mine to feed my family. I'd went.
That decision was one that many on the reservation faced.
My dad did a lot of work up at the mine. As a young guy, he was in his 20s. I was just a little guy. I think when it closed, I was like 8 years old. They made the decision back then that they had to make, but it was an everlasting, impact on the environment and the people.
43 years have passed since the mine shut down, and now the question remains.
Do you think people will be able to, take from the land again, like they used to, without any worry that, this could be harmful to me?
I think that's something that we're striving for. I think we'll know in time.
As for the cleanup's completion,
well, I believe it'll be completed within 5 years, but I'm not in a rush. I want it done right. I don't care if it takes another 8 or 10 years. It has to be done right. We're hoping that someday, it might be 50 or 100 years from now, there'll be no scarring. We'll have put Mother back the way they first found her before that first shovel went in the ground. Because you always learn from the past.
Aiden Brown.
To make a better future.
KREM 2 News.
Up next, we're tracking the threat of earthquakes here in the Northwest. We'll explain the different faults and what it would take to see the big one. Plus,
there is a celebration, but it's also a place where we can safely carry our wounds, our hurts, our trauma.
The connection between our local tribes and Buffalo as this Environment Northwest special continues. This past year, our Environment Northwest team looked into the risk the Northwest knows well, earthquakes. But not all of them are the same. Join me as I break down the complex fault lines here in the Northwest. The Northwest is one of the most seismically active regions in the United States. The threat of an earthquake at any given moment is real in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Right below our feet is the meeting place of multiple tectonic plates slowly moving and pushing against each other. The edges of those masses move and break, causing the ground to shake or volcanoes to form. The place where two of these tectonic plates meet, the Juan de Fuca plate and the North American plate, sits just off the coast and poses the biggest threat for a major earthquake and potential tsunami. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone.
And that's why we talk about things like drop, cover, hold on.
Harold Tobin is Washington State seismologist and director of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network.
Most earthquakes happen in the crust, and a few happen just in the parts of the Earth's mantle that are down these things called subduction zones.
The Cascadia Subduction Zone is a megathrust fault, or the meeting place of two tectonic plates. The Juan de Fuca plate is being forced under the North American plate at a convergent boundary. Friction keeps the plates from moving, but when the force of the plates grows too strong, friction gives way and the plates suddenly move and then stop. The sheer size of the fault means it is capable of producing some of the strongest earthquakes in the world. A magnitude 8 or 9 earthquake off the coast could cause widespread devastation. The movement of those plates is also capable of producing a devastating tsunami along the Pacific coast in Puget Sound. Not all earthquakes occur at the meeting place of tectonic plates. Some, like the Nisqually earthquake in 2001, are caused by the cracking of just one of the plates. As the Juan de Fuca moves underneath the North American plate, the edges become brittle as they are pushed downward. Cracks form in the massive tectonic plate, causing the ground above to shake. While they can still cause devastation, these tend to be weaker than megathrust faults and often don't produce a tsunami threat. The most common fault in the Northwest is the crustal fault. Relatively small cracks forming along the edge of the North American plate, often closer to population centers than their deeper counterparts. Crustal earthquakes are caused by the ground being pushed or pulled apart by the movement of the plate boundary. While those faults don't have the potential to produce a mega earthquake, a magnitude 7 close to a city center still poses a major threat. The two biggest crustal faults are the Seattle Fault and South Whidbey Island Fault. The other sleeping giants of the Northwest are the volcanoes. The final threat of earthquakes in the Northwest comes from volcanic activity. The moving magma beneath the Earth's surface causes changing pressure on the tectonic plates. The changing pressure creates faults or shaking as the ground moves below. Oftentimes we hear of cluster quakes. They signify movement, but not impending eruption. However, long period quakes like what led up to Mount St. Helens are often a sign of something bigger looming. The intensity of an earthquake at a given point not only depends on the strength, but the location. When we talk about earthquakes, you will often hear the term epicenter. That is the point on the Earth's surface directly above where the earthquake originates or takes place. Directly below the epicenter is the hypocenter, or the exact point of origin of the earthquake. From the hypocenter, waves of movement propagate or spread outward. Primary waves, or P waves, travel fast through solids, liquids, and even gas. They move like a slinky, compressing and extending out. These cause the fast shaking of an earthquake. Shear waves, or S waves, move slower, perpendicular to the direction of travel, like shaking the end of a rope or waves on the surface of the ocean. This is the rolling motion felt in certain earthquakes.
We don't feel a lot of earthquakes around here. It's been a pretty long time since we had a really strong one in our region, but we know we have the hazard from earthquakes.
By monitoring and studying earthquakes, we can better understand the dangers around us and be more prepared when they happen. This story was just one part of our Environment Northwest series, When the Earth Shakes. You can watch all the episodes right now on KREM 2+. Our Environment Northwest team takes a closer look at earthquake research, a newly discovered fault in Idaho, and breaks down our earthquake risk right now. To find more Environment Northwest stories on KREM 2+, just click Weather in the top menu bar. Still ahead on this Environment Northwest special, we're taking a closer look at cases of chronic wasting disease and the plague in our Northwest deer.
We're very concerned about it.
And we'll take you inside the Washington lab that's helping identify those cases.
To help safeguard our food security, our food system.
Plus, the environmental connection between the Spokane tribe and the area they call home. Hello, and welcome back to our Environment Northwest special, Connected with Nature. I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoux. This past year brought new problems for deer in the Northwest, including cases of chronic wasting disease and even the plague. KREM 2's Shannon Mowdy covered the response to both issues.
A month after Washington's first case of chronic wasting disease was discovered in North Spokane County, the Department of Fish and Wildlife is enacting new emergency rules. Most of the new requirements are in 3 game management units: Micah Peak, Cheney, and Mount Spokane. Hunters and salvagers in these areas will be required to send in samples of any deer, elk, or moose.
Either submit the whole head of the harvested animal or to extract the lymph nodes at the base of the skull.
And Donnie Martorello says it'll also be illegal to bait the animals for hunting, including using scent.
Anything we can to reduce that drawing these animals together.
Another rule impacts the blue area of this map for anyone who kills or salvages an animal.
Carcasses and the bones from any deer, elk, or moose that are derived from any 100 series GMUs stay within those 100 series GMUs. They cannot transport through or exit.
We're very concerned about it.
Washington is already looking ahead to lasting changes.
This is just a starting point. We will take this up with the Fish and Wildlife Commission and have a more comprehensive public involvement process.
Washington State University pathologists made the confirmation this week. Idaho's first case of plague found in a deer in central Idaho's Custer County.
This is kind of one of those rare cases that sometimes these things just happen. And it's just, I think it was also noted in the press release, very rare that they even found this animal.
Idaho Fish and Game says the infected animal was discovered on private property in June. Once the positive tests came back, everyone who had contact was tested. Roger Phillips says those tests, including for the landowner's dog, came back negative.
And we also saw no evidence of any other animals in the area that may have contracted plague.
The plague itself isn't exactly rare in the western U.S.
It's kind of somewhere on the fence between common and uncommon, because every couple of years in southern Idaho, we have plague outbreaks, usually in ground squirrel populations. Pick a number, 1.5 to 2 years, it pops back up again. But we actually have had people contract the plague. It is treatable, but that's extremely rare too.
In deer, the disease causes lesions that lead to blindness, which is why it's unusual a person would even find an infected deer. They're likely to become prey pretty quickly.
This is something that Mother Nature kind of cleans up on its own.
When it came time to confirm the cases of chronic wasting disease and the plague, wildlife officials called up Washington State University's Animal Disease Diagnostic Lab. Shannon gives us an inside look at how the lab stays on top of hundreds of thousands of tests each year in order to keep us safe.
You could say WSU's Animal Disease Diagnostic Lab's unofficial tagline is, "We worry so you don't have to." At least that's how Executive Director Kevin Snekvik thinks of it.
I think it trickles down to pretty much every person within the Northwest, because it affects not just someone at home with their dog, but also with the food that's sitting in their refrigerator.
The inner workings of the building are highly secure, but KREM 2 News got a peek through the glass where staff and students test around 250,000 animal samples every year, more than 20,000 a month from across the country.
Part of those 20,000 cases that come in, they all basically start at this table here.
I'm standing right now in the bio-level security 1 area, but just behind these double doors is the highly sealed off level 2 laboratories. Actually, this entire area of the building is so separate, it's on an entirely different air circulation system.
You actually couldn't talk to each other in this room because the air noise was so loud.
Waddle's work began 50 years ago, but now its scientists are at the forefront of alerting local, state, even federal agencies about animal diseases and potential outbreaks.
To help safeguard our food security, our food system.
The lab helped diagnose Washington State's first case of chronic wasting. It also works with a network of animal labs to detect and track disease nationwide.
Highly pathogenic avian influenza that moved from birds, avian species, into mammals, into cows, which is unprecedented.
Waddle helped pinpoint Idaho's first case and warned of broad impacts to the nation's food supply by learning how the disease went from Texas cows to the Northwest's.
How they moved cattle through the United States actually was spreading the disease.
Waddle is the go-to for many state and federal agencies that don't have their own accredited labs. It's also training the next set of veterinarians, pathologists, and biologists.
What I feel is one of our biggest contributions is actually we get to keep this going for the next generation, have people that are well trained to man it.
To protect people and animals for decades to come.
But really the key part of it is the fact that we can play a huge role at so many different levels.
Shannon Mowdy.
So that's the part I walk home at night and feel like I've done something important.
KREM 2 News.
Just a spiritual part of it, you know.
Up next, the importance of buffalo to the Northwest tribes. Plus, how growth in the Northwest is impacting our local deer population.
We're taking away from their habitat, and the best thing you can do is give it back to them.
The Kalispel tribe of Indians is working to restore buffalo in eastern Washington. In November, the tribe gifted 10 buffalo to the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. Last year, they did the same thing, gifting 30 buffalo. The Kalispel tribe said the buffalo will help Colville tribe's existing herd, giving necessary support for both habitat restoration and cultural practices. The buffalo hold deep spiritual and cultural significance for many indigenous communities, symbolizing resilience and sustenance. Sharon Yu takes us to a buffalo harvest, a sacred tradition that's been happening for thousands of years.
As the sun rises over Pend Oreille County near the Idaho border, the home of the Kalispel tribal lands hides in the fog something precious.
Just a spiritual part of it, you know.
A herd of buffalo.
Look at that. That's so cool.
Sacred symbols of life for the indigenous. The herd has roamed the Kalispel land since 1973.
You see their coat is nice already.
The buffalo are not native to eastern Washington, but have been under Kalispel stewardship for more than 50 years.
That's a pretty gray one right there.
Mark Colson, who is Lakota, and his team from Skokomish are here to take one home.
Good shot there. I pulled the trigger, but it's all of us.
The buffalo hunt has been the way of life for many indigenous people since time immemorial. A somber but swift ritual of smudging shows the buffalo gratitude for its sacrifice.
It's an offering, right? The buffalo have a relationship with the people. And taking the shot is a commitment.
Ixley Whitehawk, along with Colson, has been organizing an Indigenous Peoples Day celebration for the past 10 years.
Somebody get the barbecue going.
All of the buffalo will be used in ceremony. Part of it includes a feast to feed community.
We invite everyone to show up with a good heart, you know, with an open mind, in a humble way.
From the easternmost edge of Washington to Skokomish, the buffalo meat has traveled more than 400 miles to be honored and processed before use.
We're going to be up all night, so we'll be doing that later.
At Mark and Ixley's home in Skokomish,
This may be another roast.
both he and Ixley's 18-year-old have their work cut out for them. Trimming, slicing,
Try this knife.
and filleting
Just like that.
hundreds of pounds of meat.
Oh, it's just a cool feeling, you know. It's that satisfaction of, you know, what your ancestors or your elders have asked, you know, it's like, how will you feed the people?
This
You go like this.
is also a passage of generational knowledge
This will be good practice for you.
in the most hands-on way.
See how I get my knife in there?
It will be a few sleepless nights in Skokomish,
It's easier like that.
but this one buffalo
I have my blade just slightly tilted.
will feed
Okay, you try.
hundreds.
To sit back and look at the whole community, having one buffalo as part of them now, it's pretty neat. It's healing. It's spiritual work taking place, happening on a day that we had to fight for to be recognized.
Now we can start on the bread.
I started cooking with my grandma when I was little. And she says that your mood and your prayers and everything that you have while you're in the kitchen is like in the food. Corn, green beans, ground buffalo. We've been laughing all day. So I'm hoping that as people are out there, you know, eating the food, that they're happy and feeling good and just want to laugh.
Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
It's all connected.
Up next, how our growing population is affecting and even killing Northwest deer.
We're taking away from their habitat.
A cougar sighting had Spokane's South Hill neighborhood buzzing last summer. In the video, you can see the large cougar easily jump a fence into a yard near Manitou Park. While cougar sightings are not rare in eastern Washington, wildlife officials did say it was unusual to see one that low on the South Hill. Experts say the cougar was likely following deer. The Northwest is home to hundreds of thousands of deer, but as we grow, the landscape they call home is changing. Nicole Hernandez shows us how that change is impacting the deer population.
The aptly named Peaceful Valley is home to the river, a bunch of people, and wildlife. Spotting these deer always seems to seal the deal on the peaceful of the valley, until it's not so peaceful. Deer are having to adapt as humans destroy their peace.
It's all connected.
Samantha Bundick, hoofed mammal expert, says it's not just here by the river, but across the entire inland Northwest.
They just figured out how to coexist.
Coexisting is far from thriving, though.
You are seeing a declining population of deer.
Some human-caused.
It got hit by a car.
And some more natural, like from chronic wasting disease.
It's pretty bad. It's a disease you don't want to have in your state.
That's where Hunter Westacott comes in.
The samples we take are retropharyngeal lymph nodes.
Both North Idaho and Washington test deer for chronic wasting disease.
It can have pretty detrimental effects on your population sizes if it gets a strong enough hold.
While the disease is natural, humans are contributing to its spread. One example with feeding piles.
Artificial areas where deer can congregate and spread disease that way.
Also our infrastructure, particularly roads.
There are roads that are real barriers and they cannot cross, and that fragments habitat.
Our roads are segregating deer populations. That's bad for a couple of reasons. One, the less room deer have to spread out, the easier disease can spread. Two, genetic variation.
Having a lot of genetic variation in a population is very important for long-term success.
Without the ability to disperse and migrate, that genetic variation is harder to accomplish.
There is research showing that subspecies are being created because the genetics aren't being mixed anymore.
And then there's the obvious problem with roads.
Human collisions are one of the biggest mortality factors for ungulates.
Of all these problems, there's one thing in common. Us.
My advice is always to just let them be and enjoy watching them.
And when you can, plant native plants in your yard.
We're taking away from their habitat, and the best thing you can do is give it back to them.
An attempt to restore some of the peace the population had before us. In Spokane, Nicole Hernandez, KREM 2 News.
This is our river. This was our homeland.
Up next on this Environment Northwest special, the Spokane tribe explains their strong connection to the land and water they call home.
Hui uwiichis yer quam stipemat uthus catus.
Welcome back to our Environment Northwest special, Connected with Nature. In 1974, people from all over the world came to Spokane for the World's Fair. Exhibitions showcase the importance of taking care of the land, but as Channing Curtis reports, the people who originally lived here had to fight to be included.
My great-grandmother told a story about how the Spokanes came to live in the city of Spokane.
He went to Huribtus Uliu, Puspas, he matmutos, tin shi uch etzel.
The Spokane tribe's creation story is more than just a legend passed down through generations.
Shetimis Tliaskolkalio had
It explains why the river, the salmon, and the land are so important to the tribe.
He quentu and look pulau Tliastuliu Uyahets Mokmok.
Today, you have geologists and scientists that verify our oral history from 10,000 years ago.
Quent heads in deep me. Flu heads so seal now quiquayut heads stem.
And it's why tribal members were so upset that they weren't included in the original plans for Expo 74.
This is our river. This was our homeland.
Quent heads turturei, heads u wechinti, heads di pacey, hoi per flust uliu.
Margot Hill was 6 when she heard her great-grandmother tell the creation story at Expo 74.
My great-grandmother, Sadie Boyd, lived to be 103, but at Expo she was 90. And she spoke and she told the history of the Spokane area from 1910.
Yej ed so, mis tutui u mishashutum, chitsinawau u chich-chich chkulsum.
50 years later, you're listening to Margot's son and Sadie's great-great-grandson, Craig, tell that same story.
You know, tribes were an afterthought unfortunately, for the King Cole and the organizers 50 years ago. But I can tell you that our tribal pavilion and the native village was one of the most visited villages of all the Expo events.
The Spokane tribe had to take their fight all the way to Washington, D.C. Finally, then Senator Warren Magnuson stepped in, paving the way for the tribes to exhibit their heritage on their native land.
We
had to fight to have participation. You know, we were part of the Folklife Festival, and at 100 acres, you know, we had to fight like heck.
The Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, and Kalispel tribes came together to create the Native Village, to showcase the variety in all of our Northwest tribes.
There's Plains, American Indian, there's Plateau, we're Interior Salish Plateau, and Coastal. And so we wanted to represent all the tribal cultures. I just remember the war dances and the drumming and the songs that we shared at that time.
The original caretakers of the land, showing the world what it truly means to celebrate tomorrow's fresh new environment.
As Indigenous people, we live with the environment and with the salmon. The tribes had been living with nature since time immemorial.
That is all.
Thank you for joining us for this Environment Northwest special, as we explored our connection to nature here in the Northwest. For more Environment Northwest stories and specials, check out what we have to offer over on KREM 2+. It's home to all our series, including an in-depth look at earthquakes, snowpack, fires, endangered species, orcas, and more. It's all free to watch. Just download KREM 2+ for Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV. I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legue. We'll be bringing you more Environment Northwest stories throughout the year on KREM 2 News. Thanks for watching.